If you're using ChatGPT to understand the topic, for example, when you do literature review, you're interacting with the black box because you don't know where the results are coming from. They will sound very coherent, but also be very generic, and it will be hard to extract some interesting insights from them that will be truly original. The method that I'm going to show you today uses a really different approach. It visualizes the ideas as a knowledge graph, so you can see the main topics inside very quickly. You can zoom into specific topics to see the context where they occur, so you can understand where the results are coming from. But most importantly, you can also identify structural gaps in this discourse in order to see how you could generate better ideas by bridging those gaps with new and interesting insights. So if you're interested to learn how it works, keep watching and I will demonstrate to you step by step. As an example, we will be using a collection of research papers that was assembled by my friend and colleague. He basically set up a system where he was extracting interesting research papers from reputable research journals, and this table that he generated has the titles of the papers that you can see here, and then also a very interesting part, which is conclusions. So it's basically what are the findings from those papers that can be quite interesting for his specific area of work, which is food research, right? So we have this table, and what we can do is that we can go into Infranodus, the network analysis tool, and then click Add Texts and Files, and then do CSV import, and then we select the file that we would like to import. So this is the CSV table here, and then we say, all right, we want to analyze just the conclusions. And then when we click visualize, what happens is that those papers are represented as a knowledge graph, where the concepts, you can actually see them if you click on the concepts here, are the nodes, and the co-occurrences of those concepts are the connections. So then it builds a network graph. And then as you can see, some of those nodes, they appear more often together, so they will have the same color and be closer to each other in the graph. You can actually expand it and see it a little bit better here. So if you go to the topical view, you actually see the main topical clusters they form. So this gives you a really nice visual overview of the main ideas in these 228 papers in the conclusions that we find of what those papers are actually talking about. So we can see when we talk about ultra-processed foods, the main concern are the cancer risk, processed foods, sugar, fat, diet quality, evidence findings, dietary policy. So one thing that we can do already here, if we click on the topics, is that we can zoom into each cluster, for example, cancer risk, and then see the context from where this information is extracted, which is quite useful. If you go to ChatGPT and you upload that same file as I did here, and you tell it, okay, give me insights and gaps, it's going to give you some topics, but you don't know where it took the information from. It doesn't have a direct connection to the context here. You know, it just gives you the final report. You don't know whether it's hallucinating. You don't know how relevant all those findings are, right? Like it lists you a really nice and coherent result, but you don't know how important is, for example, mental health and behavioral effects cluster on everything, right? It just finds it somewhere in text. Whereas here, if you look at the graph, you can see those clusters ranked by their influence. So the cancer risk cluster has the highest influence, 60%, which means that it's kind of prevalent in the findings here. And then, for example, if we talk about diet quality and dietary policy, these are much less represented clusters here. So we can see directly the importance of each of those clusters. So this is the one thing that is quite effective here when you use a graph, is that you can get this visual overview, and then you can click on the topic and see what are the specific statements that form this topic. And then if you click on AI Summarize Visible, then it will activate the AI module here, where it will tell you, okay, so if I summarize this whole cluster, this is the information you get, you know, so you can also get AI summary of all the statements in this cluster. And then you know very precisely that you're just generating content based on the selection that you did. So it allows you to steer LLM's reasoning process and to point at attention to the parts of the discourse that are relevant and interesting for you. Okay, and then one other really important feature is that this graph representation allows you to find gaps. So if you click on the gaps panel here, it will show you the clusters that could be better connected. So for example, if you look here, we have processed foods and diet quality. There's a gap here. So how could we connect it in an interesting way? We can then ask the AI to generate a research question that would connect those two topics together. So then here it's creating for us some interesting questions for research that can help us develop this whole discourse further. And this is kind of like the goal of literature review, that you don't just want to get an understanding of what this whole field is about, but you also want to see what's missing inside. So this is exactly what this representation allows you to do. You find the topics, then you see which ones of them are not connected, and then you try to see how to connect them in more interesting ways. For instance, if you're creating some materials on the subject, these will be the gaps that you will want to focus on, because this is what's missing in the existing discourse, right? For instance, what's the connection between cancer risk and dietary policy here? Or what's the connection between processed foods and diet quality, you know? So really focusing on those gaps is what can allow you to generate really interesting insights. You can actually click here, and then the Infranodos AI module will generate an interesting question for you that you can use to kind of think about this subject. This is also what I like much more than using ChatGPT, because I could ask it what is the gap and then it would just give me the answer. But I like to use AI in a way where I'm steering it first to tell me where I should point my attention better, because it does a really good job in processing a lot of information, right, very quickly. But then I use the visual interface to focus my attention and AI's attention on the specific gap that exists, okay? That makes also sense to me, that I find interesting. I want to see how the ultra-processed foods relate to cancer risk. And so when I focus on this gap, then this is the question that's generated, and then I can then look into it and see if I find the answer myself, or if I like, I can also send it back to the chat, and then it's going to use the context that I'm operating in right now, so this same collection of research papers, but it will try to find if there is an answer to that question, or some kind of hint of an answer to this question in this actual graph itself. Here it, for example, says that the cancer risk likely rises not just because UPFs worsen nutrient profiles, but because ultra-processing itself may create an inflammatory exposure. So that's interesting. It actually explains the mechanism of how ultra-processed foods may cause cancer, all right? And it says that it has this operation that it works through chronic low-grade inflammation because of the way that those foods are processed and the elements that they contain within them. So it's quite interesting because you get a really clear understanding of the connection, and then you can zoom in further and explore, you know, maybe find some research papers that talk exactly about the link between inflammation and cancer, and then inflammation and processed foods. And here you have really interesting area of research that you can explore. So this is how it would work. By the way, the demonstration I'm doing right now is using the new 3D Infranodos interface. So if you want to try it out, I will leave a link to our new project, keywordgraph.com, where you can already try this interface. You can log in with your existing Infranodos account if you click the black button at the bottom on the login page, and so you can try to use this 3D graph, which will be rolling out to all Infranodos users also very soon. So I hope you find this demonstration interesting. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you tried running your own literature review using the same method and what results you got. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments to the video below. And also, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to this channel, because it really helps us to put out more videos and also to reach a wider audience who are also interested in the same topic. Thank you.